Hi, I'm Mary Pipino, and welcome to Fit for You, the show that teaches you how to live a healthier and more fit lifestyle. We're getting into August now. It's time to think about back to school, and we're so familiar with football and conditioning, and the young kids are playing soccer, but a sport we really don't think too much about is wrestling. And when I was thinking about an interesting show for this time of the year, I thought about that sport because somebody who's very near and dear to my heart is one of the superstars of the sport, my stepson, Steve DeMaiolo. He's going to be joining me. We're going to talk about wrestling and self-esteem and kids and just give it a whole new, interesting, different perspective. You're going to see a whole different, I think, feel about wrestling after we talk to Steve. I hope you enjoy the show. It is my pleasure to introduce you to somebody who's very near and dear to my heart, someone who I truly admire, my stepson, Steven DeMaiolo. Steve, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We're so honored to have you. And the reason why, like we were talking about, it was so important for me to have you on this show. We're talking about kids going back to school and kids getting involved in sports, and there's so much talked about childhood obesity and things like that. And you have been such an inspiration and mentor to so many in a sport that really doesn't get a lot of publicity in comparison to basketball and football and baseball. So you're the wrestling master. Tell us how you got started into wrestling.
I wrestled for Canfield, and now I teach and coach at Canfield. So I got started actually in 8th grade. I, growing up, had some big basketball dreams, but obviously when you see me stand up, those didn't really pan out. So my 8th grade year, I got cut from the basketball team, and a few of my buddies wrestled, and they kind of convinced me to start. So I was a little apprehensive at first, but I got into it, and so my 8th grade year was my first year. And that was at Canfield Middle School. So
well, and the first point I think that people need to take hold of, something negative happens and you're so down, like you're cut from the basketball team, which was your dream, you thought.
Sure.
Now it introduces you into wrestling, and that's where you would have never ended up in wrestling had that not happened to you, and that's where you're really making your mark.
Sure. Yeah, I think all sports in general. Obviously I talk a lot about wrestling just because that's the sport I'm in, but they teach you to overcome adversity, whether it's getting cut from a team or losing a match or losing a game or whatever it may be. They teach you to kind of turn that negative, learn from it, and become a better athlete, a better person from that. So I guess that's one way my career kind of started, turning that negative of getting cut into a positive of finding a sport that I ended up loving and becoming passionate about.
There are a lot of disciplines we're going to talk about in wrestling, but would you say that the disciplines you learned have contributed to why you are not only so successful as a wrestling coach, but as a mentor, as a teacher, as, I know you were on the dean's list when you were in, college and so on.
Sure.
So don't you think that it all maybe contributed?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing you get from athletics, whether it's youth, high school, middle school, whatever. The discipline you learn through them, the relationships, the commitment, the competitive edge that you build. I think those are things that are really takeaways from the sport that you get that help you really as a person in life, in your career, in your relationships with your loved ones. I think that's much more important than the actual accomplishments of winning state title or winning a game or a match or whatever it may be. I think those skills are much more important than anything you do athletically.
And wrestling is interesting because it's a team sport, but it's not a team sport. Tell us, the difference there.
Sure. There's a team aspect of it where when you're facing another team, say Canfield's wrestling Poland, you're accumulating points as a team, but there's also a huge individual component that a lot of the other bigger sports like football and basketball baseball don't have, where you're out there, you're wrestling an opponent, and you make a mistake, there's no one to cover up for it, everybody sees it, you don't have anywhere to hide, whereas some of the other sports, while are great sports, you don't always see that the left tackle didn't do this or the guard didn't do this in football. in wrestling, when you're out there wrestling on the mat, it's just you and your opponent, and everybody can kind of see what's happening, and you don't really have anything to hide behind. So I think that's a big part of it.
You have to really be on your game.
Yeah, you have to be on your game, and you also learn to be humble and learn that you're not the best always, and there's always probably someone better than you out there, and you take those negatives or that match that you lost or that whatever happened, and build off of it. But I think that's one of the beauty things about wrestling.
When I got to know you, had already started your high school wrestling career.
Sure.
And I remember the grueling, workout from early in the morning, and you're focused 24/7 because you wanted to make weight, you wanted to make sure that you weren't overweight and so on.
Sure.
Let's talk a little bit about about the weight classes, and weight is so important. Why?
Yeah, that's another thing about wrestling. Obviously, like I said, I'm a small guy, so wrestling, similar to boxing, people probably have some experience with that. There's weight classes, so as in high school I wrestled 112. I wasn't wrestling kids that were 150 pounds. It's kind of fair in that way.
But now, just so to put it in perspective, you're a couple inches taller than me, and I'm about 118 before I put anything in my mouth in the morning. So you were wrestling at 6 pounds less than where I'm at right now, and you're taller than me.
Yeah, well, I was a little more lean in my high school days, but yeah, I think.
Well, you look great, but I'm thinking that's really lean.
There's a discipline to it where, a lot of people, there's kind of a negative connotation on wrestling sometimes in sports like boxing, where people are saying you're cutting weight, and that's not necessarily what it is. You certainly don't want to do that yo-yo where you're up and down. You want to maintain a healthy lifestyle 12 months of the year, so you're competing at a maximum potential there, where your body's where it should be. I think, like you talked about childhood obesity, I think in America a lot of times we think that you should be big and this and that, but really it's more about being lean, being at your best body weight. There's a lot of things that go into that body fat percentage, and they measure all that and calculate all that stuff too. So, but yeah, there's different weight classes that separate kids, so you're kind of
now the reason for the weight classes is to keep it so everybody's wrestling within their fair parameter, correct?
Yeah. So they go, the lowest now is 106 all the way up to heavyweight, and the maximum on heavyweight's 285. So
now this is something I never understood. It seems like everybody wants to wrestle in a lower weight class.
Sure.
And struggles with diet to do that.
Sure.
And why?
Well, certainly not everybody does that. A lot of people, they get down to a lower weight. What it really does is it maximizes your strength potential versus other kids your size, and it's kind of a tough thing because other kids are coming down. So if you don't go down a little lower, then you're wrestling kids that are maybe bigger and stronger than you naturally. So it kind of forces kids down. But done right over a 12-month period, it's really more just about maintaining a healthy body, healthy lifestyle, rather than dropping dramatically.
But when I look at the different sports and just general weight maintenance and so on, we're really getting down to the core fundamentals, whether it's wrestling or football or trying to lose weight, whether it's men or women. It's about eating high quality foods in every food group and drinking a lot of water.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, just being smart about your food choices. Like you said, water is key. A lot of times people in sports drink a lot of sports drinks, and while those are good probably while you're competing, because they have electrolytes and those sorts of things that your body's being depleted of during those times, they're not really a healthy thing to have, just while you're sitting around or watching TV or even with your dinner.
There's nothing like hearing it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And Steve was very excited to bring one of his wrestling students, and I'm going to toss it to you, Steve DeMaiolo. Tell us who we have and why he's here.
This is Steve DePrilly. He's going into his senior year at Canfield. I coached Steve in middle school, 7th and 8th grade, and a little bit in 6th grade. I've known him probably since he's been about in 5th grade. I've coached both of his older brothers too, Leo and Lucas. So I'm pretty close to him and his family and those sort of things. And I brought him for a couple reasons. One, he's a good wrestler. Two, he's always been a hard worker. And three, he recently got the opportunity to travel to Fargo for the Greco national team. He was on Ohio's national team for that. And leading up to that, he was at a training camp for a week, working with some of the best kids in Ohio and some of the best coaches in Ohio. And I think it was an experience, and he'll tell us a little bit about it, that really changed him mentally, not only as a wrestler, but I think gave him new perspectives on life and other things. I think being around other people that are passionate and hardworking people and positive people for an extended period of time, I think really has an effect on you. So I think that was a great experience for him. So Steve, I don't know what did you think about your experience? How did it, help you? How did you benefit from it?
I had to meet new people. I had to drive an hour and a half every day. And I had to get tough quick or back out because, toughest kids in the state, you got to rise up to the occasion.
Sure. And I've known Steve for a long time. We've talked about one of the last kind of things to develop with his wrestling game is kind of his mental piece. Not that he wasn't a tough kid physically, but he always had a tough time getting over the hump, as many kids do, of facing adversity and overcoming that. So I think that probably helped you there. Coming back, you could tell you're a different kid. You're more positive. And
What helped you turn that corner?
My failures at the end of the season, honestly.
What were the failures?
Just at sectionals, I didn't do as good as I would have liked to, and it hurt, it stung, and I just don't want it to happen again. I don't want to just not screw up. I want to achieve my goals.
And here's another great example. A negative led to a positive.
Sure.
So there again, don't let something negative that happens to you drag you down.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You can rise above that and turn it into a huge success. That's fantastic. And I understand that you had an injury when you were younger.
Yeah.
And with an eye injury.
Yeah.
And you were able to overcome
that?
Yeah,
it took a while. 7 surgeries. I got injured in 2nd grade. I had my last surgery going into my sophomore year. So,
And did you wrestle through the period of time when you were, during recovery periods of time? During those years?
It was spotty. I'd wrestle. I'd have a surgery. I'd be out for a month and a half or however long it was, depending on the surgery. I never didn't wrestle a season because of a surgery.
But you came back. You went through your healing process, and then you got back into it.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't think people realize sometimes, what drive and passion and commitment that takes. It's such an inspiration.
Sure. I think, like you said, that's another adversity Steve's had to overcome, and he's done a great job with it. I know it's been tough on him and his family, but he's really overcome it and done a great job.
And we're going to talk about conditioning a little bit, and you're very lucky because your mother is an outstanding personal trainer, Robin, so you get to work out with her.
Yeah.
Great, and I know you get great guidance from Steve.
Yeah, very good guidance.
All right, and then tell us a little bit about, I think one of the most important things, correct Steve, that your wrestlers wear, headgear?
Yeah, headgear, this is just a basic headgear here. It's mainly to protect your ears if you ever see...
You want to put it on?
Sure.
A lot of boxers or wrestlers or anybody that's in the martial arts, sometimes they have cauliflower ear, and this really protects your ears and your head from any sort of injury like that. So. And
I know they need the wrestling shoes, which are very soft and pliable.
Yeah.
Any other gear required for wrestling?
We wear a singlet, which is basically just spandex, and that's pretty much it.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about, because we're going to show some conditioning exercises.
Sure.
So pre-season, we talked about doing less repetitions. We want to do a little bit heavier weight. We want to eat a little bit more because that's when we really want to build our strength, correct?
Yeah, in the off season, you're really looking to, put on muscle mass and build your strength and those sort of things. So you're eating bigger portions. You're, like you said, less reps, more weight.
And what are some of your favorite exercises?
One big thing in wrestling is, is really your hips and being able to explode. It's certainly big in a lot of other sports too, but cleans.
I'm not going to give you a bar, but can you demonstrate a clean, or can you do it without a bar?
Yeah.
Okay.
You just would pick up your bar,
Bends his back there, brings it up.
squat, and then
It's the clean and jerk all the way up.
Now I'm going to have you turn to the side and do it, and I'll tell you why it's important. Go ahead.
But really, it's just it's a lot of explosion through his hips. Obviously, he doesn't have a lot of or any weight, but it's a lot of explosion through the hips, building your hips. It's really a full body exercise as well, upper body and lower body.
Okay, so I want you to demonstrate a clean jerk. Steve, you talk about the importance of this exercise. Go ahead.
Okay.
Nice and slow.
Typically, we just do clean, so Steve's going to demonstrate a clean, like he'd have a bar there. He comes up and explodes through his hips there. Okay.
And that explosion is important, isn't it?
Yeah, that explosion is important in many sports. Football, you're going to explode
nice and
through the
slow.
line.
Down. Explode. That whole pelvis is coming forward.
Yeah, so in wrestling, that's really big. If you're in on a shot, exploding through it and finishing is really important. So that's really a big lift for it. Also, it's upper body and your legs as well. It's really a full body exercise. So that's probably one of the most important lifts for wrestling, and I think a lot of contact sports. We do a deadlift too.
Want to demo deadlift for us real quick?
sure, just
Bend at your knees.
Now, slightly bent knees, Steve. Go ahead. You keep going, Steve DePrilli.
When we do deadlifts more, I bend down here at my knees to keep my back straight, and I come up here, right there.
Perfect.
That's just in through your hips. Now, I'm not as well versed in a lot of the strength areas. We have other coaches that are better there. But those are two major lifts. Certainly squats also. Once again, that's lower body and explosion there. Bench press, and then anything pushing and pulling. Really, in wrestling is big. When you're wrestling, you're pushing and pulling a lot. So biceps and triceps.
Before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about the calves, because when I was looking at exercises for wrestling, and legs were so big because of the strength factor.
Sure.
Let's talk about calves a little bit. And you know what? We're going to turn you around, and you're going to do toe raises for me. If you can just put your toes on the end, because basically what we want to do, you can hold on for balance, and you can use your own weight. You can hold dumbbells. But the important thing is we want those calf muscles worked, and we want strength in the calf.
Sure.